Hello, today we are going to discuss the important concepts that could be asked in the exam from Western philosophy. Now, it is starting from 91th lecture. The first is that you see Thales. Now, you see there is a special category of these philosophers which are combinedly called the early Greek philosophers. There's a definite question on early Greek philosophers in the exam for sure. So, you got to be absolutely certain with Thales, Heraclitus, Anaximenes, Anaximander, Parmenides, Democritus, and lastly Gorgias. Okay, and these that is starting from 91st lecture till the 99th, you have the early Greek philosophers. The most important concept that is asked from the early Greek philosophers is their what is their arche? Okay, that's their principal element. You got to be very certain with their arches. That's the most important thing, and also the important terminologies, which are very important. For instance, when we're talking about Thales, the concept of evolution, when we're talking about Heraclitus, the notion of change. Similarly, Parmenides, Democritus, and Sophists. Gorgias and also Protagoras, very important two sophists. Please understand what is the basic principle of sophistry. What what did they preach? How are they also different from the Socratic way of understanding? That can definitely be asked in the exam. So moving on, after that we have the philosophy of Plato. Now, philosophy of Plato, you naturally understand Plato is very important. It is also very important that you have a thorough understanding that when we are talking about Plato and Socrates, how are their understanding pertaining to knowledge different from that of sophists? That has been extensively discussed in the lecture 101. Please watch it there very carefully, okay? Then we have the theory of knowledge of Plato, very important again. Moving on from 103rd lecture, we are starting with the medieval philosophers. So we have Saint Anselm, Saint Augustine, and Thomas Aquinas. These three are extremely important. There's a given question from these three. Be absolutely certain with these three philosophers. You got to understand the important quotes also which get asked in the exam. They've been asked in the exam in the past and they can be also asked in the coming times. So please be very certain with these three philosophers. Then moving on, we have Aristotle. Aristotle, you see, the theory of causation is the most important one. What are the different types of causes according to Aristotle? Have a thorough understanding of it. Then we are coming to the critique of Plato's theory of ideas, which is done by Aristotle. You can either get a question in the exam that you have to be thorough with Aristotle's philosophy and also as a critical analysis of Plato's philosophy by Aristotle. So be prepared with that. Then what we have is the moving on to the rationalism aspect of it. You see, Western philosophy is divided into two, that is rationalism and empiricism. We're starting with Rene Descartes' philosophy, that's rationalism. So firstly, you got to have a thorough understanding of what is rationalism, how is it different from empiricism, what are the different philosophers under rationalism, what are the different philosophers under empiricism. So Rene Descartes is the father of rationalism, extremely important. Cogito ergo sum, what is the meaning of the same? What is the Cartesian dualism, interaction between mind and body? Very, very important. If you go through the exam papers from the last years, you'll find that there's a definite question or at least two questions on Rene Descartes' philosophy. Then Spinoza, when we're talking about Spinoza, the most important aspect that you have to understand here is the concept of God or nature. That's lecture 115. We have discussed this extensively. Please watch this there. This is the most important aspect that could be asked on Spinoza. Then moving on, we have Leibniz. Now, monadology of Leibniz is the most important concept. What is the doctrine of pre-established harmony? What is the principle of non-contradiction? All of this is discussed under Leibniz here. Then moving on to empiricism. Now, when we're talking about empiricism, the first philosopher that we have is Berkeley. What is the most important thing in Berkeley? SAS percipi. This is very important. Be absolutely certain with the meaning of the same, the important dictums, the idea of spirit and God is also important. So these are the three important concepts under Berkeley. You see, definite 3-4 questions on rationalism and 3-4 questions on empiricism are a given. Be absolutely certain with these topics. Then we have the next philosopher that we have is Hume. Now, Hume, you know, is the British empiricist. Hume is extremely important. You have to be absolutely certain with the problem of induction. Then the concept of being and non-being. Okay. Then we have Hegel. Sorry, Hegel is dealing with the concept of being and non-being. Extremely important. That is lecture 135. Then also the dialectical process. Being then becoming, all of that is extremely important. Okay, that's the triple movement here. That is what I'm talking about. The concept of geese, it's all discussed there. The triple movement is basically nothing but thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, which is extensively discussed in lecture 138. Please watch it there. Then we are moving on to the critical philosophy of Kant, the most important one. Go through the last year papers, you'll definitely find 2 3 questions on Kant's philosophy. It's a given. Then, what are the classification of judgments, faculty of understanding, idea of reason, transcendental reduction of the categories? Most important, 114. Okay. Then, the understanding of the third synthesis, the Copernican revolution. This can also be asked in the exam. So, these are the important concepts from Western philosophy that can be asked. There are some philosophers, some branches from which questions are given, for instance, rationalism, empiricism, early Greek philosophers, medieval philosophers, Christian medieval philosophers, and also lastly coming to Kant. Kant is very important. Be absolutely certain with the different terms that we have discussed in Kant's philosophy. Moving on to the next unit, we have, this is starting with lecture 148 onwards. We have Indian ethics. The concept of Purushartha is most important. The 3 disciplines of yoga, that is Antaranga Sadhana. We have already discussed this under Indian yoga philosophy. You could be asked this under Indian philosophy or under Indian ethics. So you can naturally understand this lecture is very important. Then Jaina ethical school, very important. Comparative analysis with Gandhi can be asked. Concept of Shreyas and Prayas, extremely important again. Then what is the ethical implication of our actions? This is not as much important a concept. You just simply need to be certain with how Indian philosophy understands the concept of karma, right? Then the concept of Atman or self, Panchakosha. Panchakosha is a very important concept which is dealing with the 5 states of Atman. It's discussed in lecture 153. Please watch it. Concept of yagna, very important. Concept of duty, very important. For that matter, concept of yagna is one such topic from which questions are regularly asked. Then the term dharma as power which upholds the universe and virtues, very important again. Then lecture 157 is dealing with the concept of cosmic order, the divine and the human realms, Rita. You see, Rita is a definite concept from which at least one question is going to be asked in every examination. Now, what we have dealt here is we've taken this concept a little differently because not only we have discussed the concept of Rita, but we have also drawn a comparison with this concept and Plato's idea. So please do watch it. This is not only important from Indian philosophy's point of view, Western philosophy's point of view, but also from the point of view of Indian ethics. So one concept is dealing with 3 units here. You can naturally understand the importance of this lecture, that is 157. Then, what is the meaning of Apurva? Importance of Apurva, very important. Brahma Viharas, we have already discussed this in Buddhism, also extremely important. Then this is this concept iti kartavyavat. This is very important. Have a thorough understanding of it. This is newly added, so question can be asked on the same. Now, quickly moving on to Western ethics. Western ethics, you see the first thing that you see here is ethical non-cognitivism and its 4 kinds. You have to be absolutely certain with the types, with the meaning of ethical non-cognitivism. Extremely important. Then we have Plato's and Aristotle's understanding of justice, most important concept. Then we have the different kinds of justice, distributive, economic justice, and social justice, very important again. What is utilitarianism? The important utilitarians, for instance, John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham, have a thorough understanding of what's the difference between these 2 utilitarians. What is utilitarianism as a principle? What is it talking about? If you go on to 169th lecture, we have discussed the 9 kinds of utilitarianism also. You'll find it all there. You must understand the basic definition of all these 9. Very important. Okay. Then we have the theory of punishment, very important. What are the different kinds of it? For instance, reformative, retributive, deterrent, their meanings, who advocate the same, and how they have been used by some philosophers in their philosophy, very important. Then we have lecture 172, most important, that is Kant's deontological ethical theory. Every bit that is discussed in this lecture is extremely important from the exam's point of view. You will definitely get a question on this. Then we have the meaning of normative ethics. You must understand how is virtue ethics, consequentialism, and deontological ethics understood. Very important. Remember, they concerned philosophers for the same. We have discussed them here. For instance, you see Kant, Plato, Thomas Aquinas, and Aristotle. Remember the examples along with the definitions, most important. Then we have Kant again. which are the maxims, what is the meaning of the word imperative, categorical and hypothetical imperative, the difference between these two, what is the concept of goodwill, and what Kant says that goodwill is the only virtue. How you need to understand this can also be asked. Then, meaning of hedonism. We've already discussed hedonism. This is the Western aspect of hedonism. If you are asked in the Indian context, please refer to Charvaka's lecture. We have already discussed this. Then we are moving on to the next notion is the action of duty. This is not as important, but you just simply need to understand that, especially when we're talking about the notion of duty, you need to remember one particular philosopher, that is Kant. You have to draw in the similarity between how yoga understands the notion of karma and how Kant understands the notion of duty. You can be asked this in the exam. Okay, for instance, drawing a similarity between karma yoga and the notion of duty, that Kant says that duty for duty's sake, very important. Then you have ethical relativism, moral relativism. You can be asked about these definitions, remember them with examples, and also who advocates the same. Then we have ethical non-cognitivism, same way you have to also understand this. So this is about Western philosophy, Indian ethics and Western ethics. We've discussed the most important concepts. We've also discussed kind of questions that can be asked in the exam. Be absolutely thorough with the literature, with the important terms, with the important maxims, and also what the important principles behind these important theories are. This is very important, and please refer to the previous lectures, question papers. This lecture is based on that. I have gone through them, and these are the important topics that you need to remember from the exam's point of view. I hope this was informative. Thank you for watching.